Amazing transformation. Discover how a humiliated girl became honored. After the Baron's Surprisi. Emily felt the sharp sting of envy as her classmates strutted around the hall, their laughter echoing like a foreign language. Each pristine designer outfit, every gleaming accessory became weapons that struck at her confidence. They sneered at her thrift store jeans, mocking not just her appearance, but her very existence. She envisioned a future as a veterinarian, guided by her love for animals, yet their taunts often drowned out her fervor. Could a girl with such little privilege hope to stand among Technicolor giants? The question gnawed at her, leaving her caught between dreams and despair. When assigned a project on local wildlife, Emily's heart raced not just from anxiety, but curiosity. The nearby forest held mysteries she had yet to uncover. As she stepped into the embrace of towering trees, a sense of peace enveloped her. Hours spent there transformed fear into a quiet determination that began to extinguish the shadows of self-doubt. Every discovery was a little ember, igniting a fire within her to pursue her passion relentlessly, just as her mother, a nurse, fought tirelessly to make ends meet. Months passed, and her passion blossomed. During a school exhibition, the professor's astute eyes locked onto her work, her meticulous notes, her stunning illustrations. "You have a gift," he said, and his faith anchored her burgeoning self-worth. The science fair, however, loomed like a specter, casting long shadows over her resolve. Friends fueled by envy and rivals aching for supremacy watched closely. What if they exposed her background? Or worse, relegated her to the margins once more? But days before the fair, catastrophe struck when a cruel act of sabotage stole her research right from beneath her. With trembling hands, she fought against mounting waves of doubt and chaos, desperately piecing her project back together. Would all her effort crumble because of someone else's venom? The clock ticked away, suffocating her with every second that passed. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now, let's continue. The day of the science fair unfolded with a tense electricity surging through the gym. Students eyed each other's projects, sizing each other up, but all eyes soon diverted to Emily. She stood by her shaky display, keeping her heart and mind aligned despite the cacophony of insecurity. As the judges approached, whispers began to curl around her, puncturing her resolve. She was the outsider, the one they ridiculed. Just as the weight of despair threatened to snap her resolve, he emerged, the Baron, known for funding only the most elite. He stood before her, not merely judging, but listening with genuine interest. They connected through their stories of resilience. Could this be the moment where respect bridged the chasm between privilege and poverty? As the air thickened with uncertainty, Emily felt the stakes rise higher than ever. Would her ambition find its place, or would she once again fade into obscurity? The nexus of her fragile hopes balanced precariously. How would the world perceive her in this pivotal moment, trapped within the walls of overflowed doubt? As she prepared to share her findings, a hush fell over the room, as if time itself paused, waiting for the outcome. Emily swallowed hard, her throat dry as she stared at the assembled judges, the crowd, and most importantly, the Baron. With a deep breath, she began her presentation. The words tumbled from her lips, her voice steadying as she spoke of the delicate balance of the forest ecosystem, the value of each creature. She poured her heart into every detail, connecting the facts with her personal insights. In this moment, she was no longer the girl in thrift store jeans. She was an advocate for the wildlife she cherished. Gradually, she noticed nods of approval from the judges, their expressions shifting from indifference to intrigue. The Baron's gaze lingered on her, and Emily felt a spark ignite within, an unexpected surge of confidence. As she wrapped up her presentation, she realized she was not simply showcasing her findings, but showcasing herself. This was her story, her journey from doubt toward resilience. When her presentation concluded, simmers of applause erupted. The cacophony of whispers was replaced by murmurs of respect, and Emily felt a weight lift. Could it be that they finally recognized her for her intelligence rather than her background? The thought was intoxicating, but it sent a fresh wave of fear coursing through her veins. What if this recognition was fleeting? Just another cruel twist in her ongoing narrative. The Baron stepped forward, his presence commanding silence. "Young lady," he began, his voice gravelly yet warm. "You have a rare gift, one that goes beyond mere knowledge." His words wrapped around her like a warm blanket, encasing her doubts. "Your passion ignites these ideas. May I ask how you plan to put this knowledge into action?" Her heart raced. This was the moment she had envisioned countless times, yet now doubt clawed at her resolve again. Could she articulate her dreams? Emily thought of her mother, tirelessly working for others, and the weight settled on her shoulders. "I want to create programs that educate others about wildlife conservation, to inspire young minds to care for our planet as deeply as I do," she replied, her voice unwavering, catching the Baron's intent gaze. He smiled, his eyes sparkling with approval. "Passion combined with purpose. This is how change begins. I'd like to discuss potential funding for your initiatives." The boldness of his offer hung in the air, so surreal it felt almost like a dream. Yet, as the day continued, Emily confronted her pangs of anxiety, the gnawing worry that this opportunity could somehow slip through her fingers. The judgment of her classmates now loomed larger than ever. Even as she secured respect from the adults, the whispers of her peers still stung. Would she remain defined by her past and the perceptions of others? The voices that had once echoed in her mind now seemed dwarfed by the Baron's recognition. She stood at a crossroads, to stand strong in her newfound identity, or to succumb again to the familiar shadows of self-doubt. In the weeks following the fair, she immersed herself in developing her initiative while attending meetings with the Baron to discuss actionable goals. Each conversation was a new lesson, a new layer added to her burgeoning identity. But as she laid the groundwork, she could feel the stares of her classmates pressing heavier on her, their mockery lingering like a specter, questioning whether she truly belonged in this new world, or was an interloper among giants. It was during one such meeting, deep in thought about her next steps, that she found herself pinched between gratitude for the burgeoning opportunities and the nagging insecurity that had chased her for so long. While Emily planned her presentation for the upcoming Animal Welfare Conference, the specter of who she had been clawed insistently at her mind. But as she prepared, she stumbled across an unforeseen complication. A slip of paper, an anonymous letter that read, "Remember where you came from. You don't belong here." The words rattled her to the core. The taunts from the past erupted from their graves in a blaze. Would her resolve be tested like it had so many times before? She stared at the letter, a quiet storm brewing inside. Would she allow the chains of her past to bind her again? Or would this be the moment she chose to break free once and for all? The answer loomed as she prepared to face those who had mocked her in one last definitive confrontation. Emily clenched the note tightly in her fist, her internal battle raging as she stared out the window of the Baron's office. The world outside seemed unbothered by her turmoil, a stark contrast to the tempest within. The whispers of her classmates echoed in her mind like a relentless tide, threatening to pull her back into the depths of self-doubt. She took a deep breath, forcing herself to focus on the task at hand. It was time to channel that turmoil into something constructive. Each passing moment solidified her resolve. She didn't want to be the girl defined by her past. She was more than that now. With every meeting she had with the Baron, she felt the contours of her identity shifting, sharper, clearer, and more determined. As she meticulously crafted her presentation for the Animal Welfare Conference, Emily began to envision not just her message, but the future she wanted to create. Her initiative was more than programs. It was a chance to open a dialogue about wildlife conservation and engage with others who shared her passion. But she needed a plan, a way to translate her fervor into an actionable blueprint that would resonate. The day of the conference approached, and Emily's anxiety transformed into anticipation. She spent long hours perfecting her slides, designing engaging visuals that would encapsulate her mission. It was in these moments of creativity that she felt most alive. Confidence seeped into every line she drafted. Yet the nagging thought of her classmates' judgment lurked at the edge of her mind like a shadow, just waiting to pounce. In her quiet moments, she reflected on the bitter words of the letter. Who had sent it? An ex-classmate? A random enemy? It didn't matter. What mattered was how she chose to respond. Would she shrink under the weight of their judgments, or would she rise, unyielding, and prove her worth? That question hung in the air like a challenge she had to accept. The day of her presentation dawned bright but intimidating. She arrived early, feeling the disquieting buzz of anticipation. As she walked into the venue, the sea of unfamiliar faces both excited and terrified her. With every step, she reminded herself of her connection to the wildlife she loved, how her work brought hope and progress to conservation efforts. As her turn approached, Emily adjusted her posture, refusing to let the specters of the past weigh her down. This was her moment. It wasn't just about her. It was about the collective voice of every individual who believed in the beauty of nature. Stepping onto the stage, she felt a rush of power surging through her. Her heart raced, but it felt different. Fierce, unwavering. When she began, her voice resonated with clarity and purpose. She illustrated the urgency of her cause, the fragility of the ecosystems she adored. Stories flowed from her lips, anecdotes that connected her listeners to the animals she had dedicated her life to protecting. She saw nods of understanding, the way her passion sparked interest even among skeptical faces. However, as she launched into a particularly emotional segment, she sensed a disturbance from the crowd. It came from behind her, snickers, laughter. Instinctively, her heart sank. A familiar voice chimed in, mocking her unexpectedly. It was a taunt from one of her former classmates, and it sliced through her momentum like a knife. For a brief moment, doubt clawed at her insides, but she caught herself. She took a breath, squared her shoulders, and met the taunter's gaze. Instead of crumbling, she channeled that energy into her speech, speaking directly to the audience about resilience, about overcoming adversity, about the importance of lifting each other up rather than tearing each other down. Together, we can create a legacy for the wildlife that can't speak for themselves, she declared. But that requires all of us. It requires understanding, compassion, and yes, a bit of courage too. With those words, she felt the audience shift. The laughter dimmed as people leaned in, taking her seriously. She finished strong, her voice elevated above the chaos, and when she stepped away from the podium, she held her head high. As the applause swelled, she caught a glimpse of the Baron among the spectators. His proud smile ignited a fresh flame within her, a confirmation that this was indeed where she belonged. Yet, beneath the exhilaration lingered a tumultuous knot of unresolved tension. Could the taunts be silenced once and for all, or would they resound again like a relentless echo? As she left the stage, uncertainty hung in the air, but this time it was laced with hope. The confrontation she had dreaded was just the beginning. Now, she had a choice: to embrace this growing strength or allow her past to unravel her future. Emily took a deep breath and stepped into the next chapter of her life, determined to forge ahead. She was ready to face whatever lay ahead. Emily stepped off the stage, her heart still racing from the adrenaline of the presentation. The hum of applause blurred into a backdrop as her thoughts spiraled inward. She had risen above the jeers, but the unsettling feeling from that moment lingered like an itch beneath her skin. She glanced around, searching for a face that might validate her triumph, and there he was, the Baron. His nod of approval ignited a steely conviction within her, a conviction that this was merely the beginning. As the crowd began to disperse, Emily made her way to the Baron. The earlier doubts started to dissipate, replaced by a clarity she hadn't expected. This was her opportunity to not only solidify her passion for wildlife conservation, but also to reclaim parts of herself that had long been neglected. She approached him, her mind racing with potential plans, practical steps she could take next. "Wonderful presentation, Emily," he said, his eyes gleaming with pride. "I believe we can do great work together. You've got the audience thinking, and that's the first step." "Thank you, Baron," she replied, relishing the note of reverence in his voice. "I want to take this momentum and escalate our efforts." Perhaps we could organize some workshops or community outreach programs on wildlife protection? He nodded thoughtfully. Absolutely. What you need is a clear vision. What specifics do you have in mind? Something actionable we can start working on immediately. Immediate. The words surged excitement through her. Instead of merely working on presentations, she had a chance to transform her words into tangible actions. As they discussed future projects, ideas flowed from her like a river, unblocked for the first time. Each suggestion felt like another brick being laid toward constructing the foundation of her new identity. But in the back of her mind, the laughter from the previous moments still echoed like a haunting melody. Could her newfound momentum withstand future judgments? Shaking off the lingering doubt, Emily immersed herself in the planning process. She engaged local communities, reached out to fellow conservationists, and designed materials that would appeal to a diverse audience. A newfound determination thrummed through her, altering the fabric of her resolve. This was no longer about fear. It was about impact. Days turned into weeks. Despite her tireless efforts, she couldn't shake the uncomfortable specter of her past. One afternoon, rummaging through old files, she stumbled upon her high school yearbook. A mix of nostalgia and trepidation washed over her as she opened it. There were the faces of her classmates, the disdainful sneers and judgmental eyes that stung with familiarity. She lingered on her own photograph, a still image signifying more than just her teenage years. It was a reminder of who she had been. But as she flipped through the pages, she realized she also had to acknowledge the perseverance that had brought her to this point. What had disturbed her now sparked a fire to confront her detractors. Fueled by clarity, Emily decided it was time to confront her past directly. She drafted an email to the school, proposing a talk focused on resilience and courage, inviting her former classmates back to hear her message. The thought ignited both fear and hope. Would it reach those who had belittled her? Could she possibly change perceptions? Each keystroke felt like an act of defiance, a personal stand against the whispers of insecurity. She hit send, the act electrifying yet terrifying, the uncertainty of the response looming like dark clouds overhead. Later that day, the Baron stopped by to check on her progress. "I've heard from local groups that your enthusiasm is contagious, Emily. The work you're doing is gaining traction. Thank you," she murmured, a nervous smile creeping onto her lips. "I'm actually about to confront a different challenge. My past. I reached out to my old school." The Baron raised an eyebrow, intrigue piquing his interest. "And what do you hope to achieve with that?" "I want to show them what I've built from the ashes of their derision. It's time they see what resilience looks like." His smile returned, warmer this time. "Then you're vitalizing your narrative, Emily. That's how real change begins." As she stood before her work, staring at the vibrant plans sprawled across her desk, she felt something shift. She was no longer running from her past. She was preparing to face it head-on. What followed would test not only her resolve, but also the strength she had cultivated. As she finalized her plans for the talk, an unsettling question surfaced. Would her classmates recognize the woman she had become? Or would they remain shackled to the ghost of the girl they once knew? A flicker in her chest ignited a buzz of excitement and dread. It was time to find out. The day arrived with a bittersweet air, as Emily found herself standing at the threshold of her high school auditorium. The hall was bathed in soft light, an eerie contrast to the shadows of her former experiences that lurked behind her like faint echoes. She thought back to the times when laughter had pierced her heart, a reminder of her struggle to fit in, to be heard. As she stepped inside, the familiar scent of polished wood and chalkboards engulfed her, igniting a swirl of anxiety and nostalgia that threatened to derail her resolve. She took a deep breath, the air thick with anticipation and self-doubt, pushing forward against the gravity of her memories. Today, she wasn't just an attendee. She was the speaker, the teacher, a position she had yearned for during her formative years. With each passing moment, attendees trickled in, many faces lost to time, some still holding the weight of judgment in their eyes. But Emily stood tall, her heart steadying with determination. She had rehearsed this talk in her mind countless times, but now, facing her past, her pulse quickened, a cacophony of hope battling trepidation. As the clock ticked closer to her time on stage, she felt the Baron's presence beside her, solid like a rock. His reassuring nod sparked a flicker of confidence within her. She spotted a few familiar faces in the crowd, some whispering and nodding with curiosity, others simply looking unbothered. Would they understand the journey that had brought her back to this place? When her name was announced, she walked toward the podium, her strides now firm. The murmurs subsided, and silence enveloped her. Gripping the microphone, she began, speaking from a place that was raw yet empowered. She recounted her high school experiences, weaving a narrative that reflected her vulnerability but also highlighted her evolution. "I remember the laughter," she started, her voice steady. "It felt like knives sometimes, cutting deep. But today I stand before you not as a victim but as a testament to resilience." Reactions varied. She noticed a few nods of recognition, perhaps from those who understood her struggle better than she realized. There, in that space, she poured her heart into discussing empowerment and the importance of following one's passion, tying it into her work in wildlife conservation. "If I can reclaim my voice, then so can each of you. We can redefine who we are in ways that matter," Emily implored. The words flowed freely, illuminating parts of herself she had long hidden. This was no longer about needing validation. It was about offering it to herself and those who listened. As her speech built momentum, she caught sight of some faces softening, expressions shifting from ridicule to contemplation. It ignited something deep within her, a scorching desire to be understood, to change perception, both of herself and of others. But just as she felt herself breaking barriers, a wave of doubt crashed over her. What if some were still unwilling to change their opinions? What if the shadows of the past gripped tightly on their imaginations, rendering her growth invisible? With each question, her resolve grew stronger. She concluded her talk with a call to action, urging her peers to take the steps toward making meaningful change. As she stepped back from the podium, applause filled the room, yet the silence of confrontation lingered, and uncertainty wrapped around her thoughts. Would they accept her now? The Baron approached her, pride dancing in his eyes. "You faced them with strength and authenticity, Emily. That's no small feat. But I can see this isn't over for you." "No," she replied, a sense of awakening igniting within her. "It's only just begun. I need to know if my message made a difference. I'm ready to face the conversations that come next, even the difficult ones." As she gathered her notes and prepared to step outside into the bustling hallway, she sensed a change within her, a newfound assertiveness, ready for whatever challenges lay ahead. But would her courage bring about the transformation she sought, both for herself and for those who doubted her? The answer would reveal itself in the conversations that followed. Emerging through the doors, she took a deep breath, embracing the uncertainty of what lay ahead. A chill raced down her spine, not from fear, but exhilaration, as she shaped her path anew. There, a familiar voice called her name, a figure from the past, eyes glistening with something she couldn't quite interpret. "Emily," they said, "we need to talk." The moment hung in the air, heavy with potential and anticipation. What would this encounter unveil? Emily turned to face the figure, her heartbeat quickening. The face, now slightly older but unmistakable, belonged to Claire, someone who had once sat at the popular table, a place Emily had longed to belong. There was a shift in the air between them, a tension that brought back memories of high school dynamics, where insecurity reigned king. "Claire," Emily said, trying to mask her surprise with a composed demeanor. "It's been a long time." The words hovered, heavy with unspoken history. "I know," Claire replied, shifting nervously from one foot to the other. "Can we talk? It's important." Just outside the auditorium, the hallway buzzed with laughter and chatter, a stark contrast to the weight of their past. It gave her a sense of urgency. Whatever was coming could not wait. She nodded and followed Claire to a quieter corner, a retreat away from prying ears and curious eyes. As they settled against the wall, Claire's gaze dropped, avoiding the intensity of Emily's. "What you said up there, it struck a chord with me. I never realized how hard it must have been for you," she began, her voice barely above a whisper. "Thanks," Emily replied, a flicker of hope igniting in her chest. She wasn't sure where this conversation would lead, but it was a chance to peel back layers of misunderstanding that had colored their past. I didn't think you could ever change, Claire admitted, her cheeks flushing with an unintended honesty. I'm sorry for how I treated you. I was so caught up in my own insecurities. Her words, laced with regret, felt like a balm on old wounds. Emily could almost hear the gears of realization clicking into place for Claire. Everyone has their battles, Claire, Emily responded softly. It was a moment for empathy rather than judgment, an understanding that her past had been complex for both of them. I've learned that we all wear masks to cope, even if we don't realize it. Claire nodded, drawing in a deep breath, her eyes growing serious. I need your help. There's a project about environmental science that I'm involved in, but I feel lost. Your background in wildlife conservation makes you the perfect person to guide us. Emily blinked, surprised. It was an odd request, coming from someone who used to occupy a different world. Yet it sparked something in her, a reflection of all she had fought to achieve. Why me? She asked, her voice steady but curious. Because I see you now, Claire replied, her honesty bearing the weight of their shared history. I see your strength, even if I didn't then. I realize I've held on to misconceptions, judgments that were unfair. I want to change too. The irony of their roles struck Emily. The girl who had once felt belittled was now being sought for guidance. I think I can help, she said slowly, feeling a mixture of excitement and responsibility. But you need to be committed to this. It means stepping outside of our pasts and doing the work ourselves. I'm ready, Claire affirmed, determination lighting her features. This isn't just about the project. It's about growing and looking beyond our old identities. Emily could feel the weight of potential blooming before her, the kind that could bridge past wounds into productive futures. This was her chance to redefine her narrative, not just for herself, but for others too. Yet an unsettling thought crept into her mind, tangible like the shadows that had once haunted her. Could this collaboration truly shift their dynamics, or would old paradigms push through, threatening to unravel their budding partnership? As they parted ways to gather materials for the project, Emily felt a deep stirring within her. This was a pivot point, and she was ready to take bold steps forward. The task ahead, however, wouldn't be devoid of challenges. Leaving the building with Claire's last words hanging heavily in her mind, Emily realized that confronting her past hadn't concluded. It was evolving, reshaping into an opportunity for transformation. Would Claire remain steadfast through the difficulties ahead? Could Emily fully embrace the role of mentor without slipping back into old insecurities? The answers loomed just ahead, waiting to be uncovered in the days to come. Emily awoke the next morning with a blend of anxiety and determination swirling in her chest. The conversation with Claire had ignited a flame, but amidst the excitement lay seeds of doubt deeply buried in her psyche. Today would mark the beginning of their collaborative project, and she couldn't afford to let past insecurities cloud her judgment. Staring out the window at the dew-kissed grass, she reflected on the woman she had become. No longer the timid girl yearning for validation, she was a professional with a mission, committed to making a tangible impact. But the specter of her high school self lingered nearby, whispering uncertainties into the fold of her consciousness. Emily inhaled deeply, reminding herself of her goals. This was not merely about guiding Claire, but also about affirming her own growth. In years past, she had allowed others' perceptions to define her. Now, she stood ready to redefine their narrative together. When she arrived at the community center, the buzz of familiar faces greeted her, many of whom she had once avoided. With each good morning exchanged, she felt the weight of the past releasing its grip, slowly transforming doubt into resolve. Claire was already there, fidgeting with papers on a table lined with eco-friendly materials. The nervous girl Emily once knew flickered beneath her confident facade, but there was a new spark of something. Perhaps hope, perhaps determination. "Morning," Emily said, injecting warmth into her tone. "Ready to get started?" "Definitely. I'd love to hear your ideas," Claire replied, her eagerness making Emily's heart swell. For the first time, it felt like they were partners, each bringing unique strengths to the table. They spent the focus of the next hour brainstorming, flipping through books, and jotting down ideas about their environmental science project. Emily found her niche, articulating concepts she had once believed to be beyond her grasp. The deeper they delved into discussions about ecosystems and conservation efforts, the more she rediscovered her own passion. And the encouragement Claire radiated began to lift her spirits. But amid their collaborative efforts, a looming question lingered in Emily's mind. What if Claire faltered later in the project? The prospect of an unsteady partnership became increasingly disquieting. Past occurrences of betrayal and misunderstanding felt like wandering thoughts threatening to disrupt her newfound focus. In an attempt to quell the rising tide of anxiety, Emily decided they should set goals and break down their timelines. Let's outline what we can achieve each week. Clarity will help us stay focused, she suggested. As they crafted their plan, Emily took notice of her own tendencies. I am not merely learning, I am evolving. She started to recognize that she wasn't just guiding Claire. In some respects, she was mentoring herself. However, as they wrapped up their first day, the shadows of doubt clawed at the edges of her confidence once more. Could she maintain this mentor role, or would her past creep in to disrupt their progress? That night, as she prepared for bed, Emily pondered over the decisions ahead. She knew they would face hurdles, but she also understood the importance of not giving in to fear. After all, this wasn't just about environmental progress, but about personal triumph and resilience. Emily realized her biggest challenge was yet to come, facing the voices of her past when they inevitably surfaced again. Would she have the strength to confront them, or would they overpower the commitment she made not only to Claire, but to herself? As she drifted into sleep, a resolution formed. The following day would bring them closer to unveiling a truth buried beneath layers of past uncertainty. A confrontation with her own limitations was waiting just at the horizon. The time had come to face more than just the whispers of her childhood. She needed to boldly confront the ultimate obstacle: fear of failure in this new partnership. Would she leap forward, or would she yield to the remnants of a past she wished to surpass? The path forward was neither clear nor easy, but Emily was ready for the challenge ahead. Would Claire support her in this endeavor, or would the patterns of yesterday begin to unravel the promise they had built today? As dawn broke, Emily stepped into the light, a flicker of hope lighting her path. Today held promise, illuminated by the resolve to rise above her uncertainties. She had consciously chosen to dismiss the murmurs of self-doubt that so often toyed with her confidence. Instead of viewing the project as merely a collaborative effort, she recognized it as an arena for personal growth, a platform to showcase her capabilities. Emily arrived at their workspace, her mind racing with plans for the day. With each step, she could feel the atmosphere humming with potential. Upon entering, she caught Claire's eager gaze, which mirrored her own anticipation. "How about we tackle that research first?" Emily proposed, her enthusiasm palpable. "Absolutely. I've gathered some articles," Claire responded, her excitement contagious. As they dove into the material, Emily felt her anxiety ebb away. Every paragraph they read fueled her passion and solidified her conviction. Yet, even amidst this newfound courage, a nagging voice echoed the familiar refrain of fear. What if Claire depended on her too heavily? What if this partnership unraveled? Instead of allowing these thoughts to fester, Emily resolved to articulate her insecurities to Claire. "Can we talk about what each of us is comfortable with?" Emily suggested, hoping her vulnerability could carve a pathway for trusting collaboration. "Definitely," Claire said, offering a reassuring nod. They agreed to seek balance in their contributions, recognizing their strengths: Emily's analytical mindset and Claire's creativity. This newfound clarity washed over Emily like a wave, fortifying her resolve to challenge the shadows of her past. Energized by this transparent communication, they worked tirelessly through the day, their synergy blossoming into a dynamic partnership. Yet, as success loomed closer, Emily encountered her greatest challenge: navigating her fear of failure without Claire's guidance. Would she falter if needed to take charge, or would she step into the role they had both envisioned? That evening, while reviewing their progress, Emily felt the familiar clutch of doubt creeping back. The numbers and findings stood before her, but the thought of showcasing them unnerved her greatly. What if their work didn't resonate? What if their project fell short of expectations? In that moment, she recognized that her journey wasn't just about success. It was about embracing the hiccups that came with it. "Let's practice our presentation together," Emily suggested, feeling a surge of courage. The request felt liberating, For the first time, she wasn't just hiding behind the facade of accomplishment. She was fostering collaboration and accountability. Claire eagerly agreed, and together they rehearsed, refining their narrative with each iteration. Emily excelled at conveying information, while Claire breathed life into it through her storytelling. Emily's confidence surged as she realized their combined efforts enhanced not just their project, but her own evolving identity. Yet, days later, an email arrived that would shake her foundation, an invitation to present their findings at a regional symposium. A swelling tide of anxiety surged through her. What if they didn't measure up? What if she failed in front of an audience? This was a pivotal moment. She had the opportunity to showcase not only their work, but her growth in the face of fear. It was time to confront the specter of inadequacy that had haunted her for years. Would she allow it to dictate her next move, or dare to stand tall against it? With the days drawing closer to their presentation, Emily found herself at a crossroads. Should she retreat to the comfort of anonymity, or embrace the unknown ahead? The decision weighed on her like a heavy shroud, a test of her newfound resilience. The dawn of the event approached, and as she lay in bed that night, she understood. This was her moment to translate her journey, an opportunity to redefine her narrative beyond the insecurities. Would she seize it, or would she let it slip through her fingers? Tomorrow would bring the culmination of their hard work, but it also bore the weight of her deepest fears. Would she step forward and seize the moment, or would hesitation unravel all that she had cultivated? Emily awoke to the warm glow of the morning sun filtering through her curtains, a stark contrast to the cold reality that had begun to seep into her mind. Today was not just another day. It was a catalyst for everything she had been building over the past few weeks. The symposium loomed ahead, a specter of both promise and dread. She felt the weight of expectation pressing down on her, each breath a battle against the anxiety that threatened to consume her. Standing before the mirror, she scrutinized her own reflection, searching for the strength she needed. The determined look in her eyes didn't just show her resolve, it demonstrated her struggle. This day wouldn't just reflect their project, but also the journey she had undertaken to confront her fears. "I can do this," she whispered, a personal affirmation that echoed against the walls of her mind. Yet doubt crept in with reminders of her past failures. What if I freeze? What if I let Claire down? Shaking off the looming shadows, she dressed in her most professional attire, an outfit that echoed authority and competence. Doing so felt like an act of rebellion against her inner critic. She mentally rehearsed the presentation, each line rolling effortlessly off her tongue. At the venue, the air buzzed with excitement and anxiety, attendees milling about, engaged in animated conversations. As she and Claire set up their materials, Emily tried to absorb the energy of the room, rather than be intimidated by it. Claire's presence was a comfort, her buoyant spirit wrapping around Emily like a protective cloak. "Are you ready?" Claire asked, her eyes sparkling with enthusiasm. "More than ever," Emily replied, though her voice had a slight tremble. A rush of adrenaline coursed through her veins, pushing her toward a state of heightened alertness. As the time approached for their presentation, a hush fell over the room, and Emily's heart raced. When called forth, she stepped up to the podium, but her legs felt like lead. Taking a deep breath, Emily steadied herself, focusing on the effort they had invested in their work. "Today, we are delighted to share our findings on..." As she launched into her material, words flowed freely, confidence building with every sentence. The data they had compiled illuminated her expertise, and she reveled in articulating her thoughts clearly, buoyed by Claire's seamless interjections that added creative flair to the facts. Yet, a sudden flicker of doubt sparked within her, a quick thought that maybe her confidence was just a facade. Would they receive harsh criticism? What if the audience saw through her exterior? But rather than letting the fear derail her, Emily harnessed it. She leaned into her narrative, recalling the struggles and triumphs that had defined this journey. Near the end, she wrapped up with a strong summary, her voice clear and steady. As they stepped down, applause filled the air, washing over her like a warm tide. The thrill of being acknowledged was intoxicating, a reaffirmation that she did belong here. "See? You were fantastic," Claire exclaimed, her glee infectious. Yet as they received feedback from the audience, Emily's mind twisted with perplexing thoughts. Compliments mixed with her nature to question the authenticity of praise. While they were praised, an unsettling voice whispered, "Was it enough?" In that moment, she realized the presentation was merely a step in her journey, not the final destination. Each acknowledgement revealed more dimensions of herself: confidence, resilience, the ability to express articulately. But beneath the surface simmered a more profound revelation. Her growth wasn't just about the accolades received, but about the courage to stand in her own truth. The closing moments of the symposium came rushing forward, and as she took a step back, Emily saw a path unfurling before her. New opportunities awaited, connections made, and the burgeoning light of her potential shining anew. With a sense of purpose forming, she knew she must face the next challenge ahead, the call to push even further beyond self-imposed limitations. As she left the venue, exhilaration coursed through her. However, a new email pinged in her inbox, a message from a leader in her industry. Would she be willing to discuss her findings in a more in-depth manner? What awaited her in this next chapter? The exhilaration that had lifted her spirits now battled with a fresh wave of uncertainty. Would she take the plunge into this new opportunity, or would fear restrain her yet again? Emily stood at the precipice of a new chapter in her life, the weight of her evolving identity settling comfortably upon her shoulders. Every experience that had shaped her brought clarity. This was a moment of profound transformation. No longer the girl haunted by whispers of doubt, she now wore her past like armor, a testament to her resilience. She had conquered the arena of social anxiety, proved her competence in the professional space, and unearthed a passion that fueled her drive for wildlife conservation. The email from the industry leader was a beacon of opportunity. Meeting with someone recognized in her field felt like the culmination of years of hard work and dedication. As she prepared for the call, she recognized an undercurrent of excitement coursing through her, a sharp contrast to the timidity that once dictated her actions. She had navigated through the chaos of high school ridicule and emerged not just intact, but thriving. Her vision was no longer a distant dream. It was a vivid, achievable reality. The days leading up to the call were filled with preparation, each moment cementing her newfound confidence. She meticulously reviewed her notes, reorganized her insights, and practiced articulating her concepts. Clarity was her focus. Her passion for conservation radiated from within, lighting her path forward. Emily welcomed the surge of adrenaline. It was evidence of her growth, a representation of her evolution from uncertainty to purposeful determination. When the day of the call arrived, Emily felt an electric charge envelop her. She took a deep breath, reminded of all the battles she had fought to reach this juncture. As she dove into the discussion, her voice resonated with authority and insight. She spoke not only of her research but also of her journey, weaving her personal narrative with tangible outcomes. The leader listened intently, his curiosity piqued by her fervor. "Your insights into wildlife conservation are refreshing, Emily," he said. "I believe you have the makings of a leader in this field. Let's arrange a follow-up meeting to explore potential projects together." In that moment, a wave of elation washed over her. Recognition was no longer a distant hope. It was real, solid, and deserved. She could visualize the path ahead, one that blended her professional aspirations with her deep-seated desire to effect change. Emily had not only proved her worth but had established herself as an advocate within her field. Over the following weeks, her professional life flourished. Empowered by the knowledge that she had forged her identity through perseverance, Emily initiated community outreach programs that educated and inspired young minds about wildlife conservation. Each workshop saw attendance grow, transforming her passion into a symbiotic relationship with the community she longed to positively influence. However, her journey wasn't just confined to the office or classrooms. One evening, amidst the regular hustle and bustle of her new life, she received an unexpected message from Claire, an invitation to speak at a local high school about the importance of resilience and embracing one's authentic self. The irony was not lost on her. The girl who had once fled from the whispers of ridicule was now a voice of empowerment, ready to confront even the strongest shadows. Standing before students in that same auditorium where she had once felt small, Emily spoke passionately about her path to overcoming adversity. As she engaged with young minds, there was no hesitation. She shared her story, emphasizing that setbacks could be perceived as stepping stones, not defining labels. The eerily familiar atmosphere buzzed with a different energy this time. Students listened, intrigued by her sincerity. She was no longer an outsider. She was an inspirational figure representing the pursuit of dreams regardless of background. By the end of her talk, applause erupted, affirmations that felt like a warm embrace. The deep-rooted fears that once plagued her now seemed more like old friends, familiar, but not as powerful. Emily had soared beyond insecurity and embarrassment, mastering the art of narrative reclamation. That night, as she settled in, her heart swelled with fulfillment. She had come full circle by harnessing her vulnerabilities and introducing growth from her experiences. Each achievement, big and small, symbolized not just her professional ascent, but also her internal metamorphosis. She had proven to herself, and to the world, that she belonged among the giants, using her voice to foster change. Emily drifted into sleep with the contentment of someone who had conquered the mountain of self-doubt, each breath a reminder of how far she had come. As she prepared to face new challenges with an unwavering spirit, she understood that this was not just a conclusion to her story, but a powerful affirmation of all that lay ahead. A life not guided by the opinions of others, but by a resounding echo of self-belief. Now, she was armed not just with the accolades of achievement, but with a personal mantra. Each day, she would continue to forge her own path, turning whispers into roars of inspiration for those who dared to dream. Among the echoes of her past, the brightest voice now belonged to her, a message of empowerment ringing true for not just herself, but for generations to come. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Your support makes a difference. Comment your reactions and theories about the ending. We want to hear from you. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. You need to subscribe now. Don't wait even one more second to share. Be part of the journey.